Hello, welcome back. I'm gonna read out of our little Emma book today. Look at this. A little 1-year-old onesie for my friend's baby who's turning 1 in July. Could you even believe it? I had thought, I think when she grows out of this, I'm gonna cut it out and then sew it to another shirt that's big enough for her. And then we'll cut that out and sew it to another shirt that's big enough for her. So she'll have little memories of each shirt that it's been sewn to. And then when she grows up and like goes to college or something and studies Jane Austen, when she becomes an English literature major in college, then I can give her like a cool like jean jacket or whatever the cool style is in 20 years. Oh my god. I'll be 60. And I will be hand sewing this onto some sort of garment for her and send her off to college as an obstinate headstrong girl. My husband and I did just finish the Pride and Prejudice 1995 BBC mini series. And then he finally like got all the characters. Like, I mean, we were on the last episode and he was like, "Who's Mr. Collins?" It's just so crazy. It's just so crazy. I have like a graph. I have like a family tree of the Miss Austen show where it was like these people are related and this man married this woman and this woman is their sister-in-law now because he married this woman, and this woman is now their sister-in-law, and this sister-in-law has a sister, and her name has felt very, and who was her sister? A witch. It felt very like that. Um, but he finally got it, and then we watched the 2005 version. He's like, "This is so much better. This one's so much better. The other one's so cheesy." And I was like, "I know. A lot of people love the 1995 version, but this is some. If you need a slower paced something, I didn't realize that the 95 version had all these like ghostly apparitions of like when when Darcy's alone, he sees like Elizabeth in the mirror, and then when Elizabeth is alone, she sees like Darcy in the mirror, and there are these like ghostly apparitions, and it's very funny to me. Okay, last thing before we start reading. I just started watching do you guys know those personality people who like study personalities and they're like in the military and they're interrogating they like are professional interrogators, and one of them said I was watching this episode of Spot the Hoax in Sherry Papini's kidnap story, and there's four people analyzing her body language, and they said that if you touch your hair, it's signifying that you like know stuff. And I touch my hair a lot, and I don't know why. I think I don't ever look at myself for long enough, so I'm finally like actually seeing my hair and what it's doing, and I'm like, whoa, this is like crazy. But they said if you touch your hair when you're being interrogated, it's like you're trying to signal that you know something, and that is not what I'm doing. So if there's any interrogator analyses looking at me and analyzing me, okay, why would they even? I just had that thought. He said that in the video, and his name is Chase. What's the guy's name? Chase something. The behavior people. Chase Hughes. He was in the military, and they watch people being interrogated and they look at body language, and it's that kind of stuff is fascinating to me. Like, did you see the disgust, and then she tried to like itch it off, and then she's like faking being traumatized. Wow. I believe, okay, tangential. I believe we're on chapter 11 of Emma by Jane Austen. And I have decided that I'm going to read Persuasion next, thanks to a YouTube comment. And I'm gonna read Northanger Abbey last because I'm still so confused about the order she wrote the books, and I left my Sense and Sensibility copy at my mother-in-law's house, and I feel like that has the timeline of when she wrote them. But I think Northanger Abbey is like one of her first books that she wrote. But I think it would be very interesting. But I also read that Northanger Abbey is the least favorite. It's also in most English literature, like college courses, and there is a reason for that because it is like her most complex, which is crazy to think it's one of her first books. I'm still confused. Everybody knows the order that they were published, which is, I think, the order I'm reading them is when they were published, and I don't know when they were all written. I'm sure she was just writing them as she was reading them. I don't know what Jane Austen did, but she was brilliant, and let's read more of it. I'm not going to touch my hair. That's it. Chapter 11. Mr. Elton must now be left to himself. It was no longer in Emma's power to superintend his happiness or quicken his measures. The coming of her sister's family was so very near at hand that first in anticipation and then in reality, it became henceforth her prime object of interest, and during the 10 days of their stay at Hartfield, it was not to be expected. She did not herself expect that anything beyond occasional fortuitous assistance could be afforded by her to the lovers. She still believes that Harriet Smith and Mr. Elton are lovers, which it's very, very obvious to me. I have watched the movies, so I do know what's going to happen, but I've never read the book, but it is very obvious in the book that Mr. Elton is not into Harriet Smith at all and is very much into Emma. And she is not picking up on these clues, and she's not right. We're reading this book through the theme of, is Emma ever right in her matchmaking presuppositions? I don't know if that's a word. Saying how she don't occasional fortuitous seems to be afforded to the lovers, yes. They might advance rapidly if they would, however. They must advance somehow or other, whether they would or no. She hardly wished to have more leisure for them. There are people who, the more you do for them, the less they will do for themselves. The more you do for them, the less they do for themselves. You can lead a fish to water. You can lead a fish to water. You can lead whatever. Mr. and Mrs. John Knightley, from having been longer than usual absent from Surrey, were exciting, of course, rather more than the usual interest. Till this year, every long vacation since their marriage had been divided between Hartfield and Donwell Abbey. But all the holidays of this autumn had been given to sea-bathing for the children, and it was therefore many months since they had been seen in a regular way by their Surrey connections, or seen at all by Mr. Woodhouse, who could not be induced to get so far as London, even for poor Isabella's sake, and who, consequently, was now most nervously and apprehensively happy in forestalling this too short visit. Mr. Woodhouse is so far one of my favorite characters. He's so funny, and I love that we are again mentioning sea bathing for the children. He thought much of the evils of the journey for her, and not a little of the fatigues of his own horses and coachmen, who were to bring some of the party the last half of the way. But his alarms were needless, the 16 miles being happily accomplished, and Mr. and Mrs. John Knightley, their 5 children, and a competent number of nursery maids, all reaching Hartfield in safety. The bustle and joy of such an arrival, the many to be talked to, welcomed, encouraged, and variously dispersed and disposed of, produced a noise and confusion which his nerves could not have borne under any other cause, nor have endured much longer even for this. But the ways of Hartfield and the feelings of her father were so respected by Mrs. John Knightley that, in spite of maternal solicitude for the immediate enjoyment of her little ones, and for their having instantly all the liberty and attendance, all the eating and drinking and sleeping and playing which they could possibly wish for, without the smallest delay, the children were never allowed to be long a disturbance to him, either in themselves or in any restless attendance on them. Now, I just want to say that felt like a really long sentence. And it brings me back to when I first started reading these books. And it was basically one of the reasons why I started making these videos, is because I just couldn't. I kept laughing. I feel like if I were in high school and I wrote that sentence, there would be red marks everywhere saying, that sentence is a run-on sentence. It's too long. There's far too many commas. I would have gotten in trouble. And I think that's so funny to me that this incredible woman with so much talent, like, basically wrote what my high school teachers would have marked up. And I needed a laugh. And I also needed, like, other people to be like, holy smokes, that's a crazy sentence. And what did it even mean? I'm going to be playing this game Balderdash at my party, at my 40th birthday party, Balderdash. Like, you have a word and you have to guess the definition of that word. And I tried to provide sentences from Jane Austen books, but the sentences are so long that I ended up, like, ellipsing the sentences, but then it's so out of context. It's just not, it's gonna be, I played it with my husband and he got very sleepy. So I think it should be at the very end of the party and send everybody off sleepy. Hopefully they'll drive okay. But I thought it was so funny. I mean, this is I'll read the whole sentence again. This is the whole sentence. The bustle and joy of such an arrival, the many to be talked to, welcomed, encouraged, and variously dispersed and disposed of, produced a noise and confusion which his nerves could not have borne under any other any other cause, nor have endured much longer even for this. But the ways of Hartfield and the feelings of her father were so respected by Mrs. John Knightley that, in spite of maternal solicitude for the immediate enjoyment of her little ones, and for having their instantly all the liberty and attendance, all the eating and drinking and sleeping and playing which they could possibly wish for, without the smallest delay, the children were never allowed to be long a disturbance to him, either in themselves or in any restless attendance on them. Period. Okay, moving on. Mrs. Knightley was a pretty, elegant little woman of gentle, quiet manners, and a disposition remarkably amiable and affectionate, wrapped up in her family, and a devoted wife, a doting mother, and so tenderly attached to her father and sister that, but for these higher ties, a warmer love might have seemed impossible. She could never see a fault in any of them. She was not a woman of strong understanding or any quickness, and with this resemblance of her father, she inherited also much of his constitution, was delicate in her own health, over-careful of that of her children, had many fears and many nerves, and was as fond of her own Mr. Wingfield in town as her father could be of Mr. Perry, the apothecary. Right? Or the alchemist? No, I don't know the difference. They were alike, too, in a general benevolence of temper, and a strong habit of regard for every old acquaintance. Mr. John Knightley was a tall, gentlemanlike, and very clever man, rising in his profession, domestic and respectable in his private character, but with reserved manners which prevented him being generally pleasing, and capable of being sometimes out of humour. He was not an ill-tempered man, not so often unreasonably cross as to deserve such a reproach, but his temper was not his great perfection. His temper was not his great perfection. And indeed, with such a worshipping wife, it was hardly possible that any natural defects in it should not be increased. Right. The extreme sweetness of her temper must hurt his. He had all the clearness and quickness of mind which she wanted, and he could sometimes act an ungracious or say a severe thing. He was not a great favourite with his fair sister-in-law. Nothing wrong in him escaped her. She was quick in feeling the little injuries to Isabella, which Isabella never felt herself. Perhaps she might have passed over more had his manners been flattering to Isabella's sister, but they were only those of a calmly kind brother and friend, without praise and without blindness, but hardly any degree of personal compliment could have made her regardless of that greatest fault of all in her eyes, which he sometimes fell into, the want of respectful forbearance towards her father. There he had not always the patience that could have been wished for. Mr. Woodhouse's peculiarities and fidgetiness was sometimes provoking him to a rational remonstrance or sharp retort equally ill bestowed. It had not often happened for Mr. John Knightley it had not often happened, for Mr. John Knightley had really a great regard for his father-in-law, and generally a strong sense of what was due to him. But it was too often for Emma's charity, especially as there was all the pain of apprehension frequently to be endured, though the offence came not. The beginning, however, of every visit displayed none but the properest feelings, and this being of necessity so short, might be hoped to pass away in unsullied cordiality. They had not been long seated and composed when Mr. Woodhouse, with a melancholy shake of the head and sigh, called his daughter's attention to the sad change at Hartfield since she had been there last. "Ah, my dear," said he, "poor Miss Taylor. It is a grievous business. Bill Nye was so good in Emma." Okay. "Ah, yes, sir," cried she with a ready sympathy. "How you must miss her, and dear Emma too. What a dreadful loss to you both. I have been so grieved for you. I could not imagine how you could possibly do without her. It is a sad change indeed. But I hope she is pretty well, sir." "Pretty well, my dear, I hope, pretty well. I do not know, but that the place agrees with her tolerably. It's Ent. It is giving Ent. That's so funny to me." Mr. John Knightley here asked Emma quietly whether there were any doubts of the heir of Randalls. A-I-R? The heir? What does it mean? Huh. "Oh, no, none in the least. I never saw Mrs. Weston better in my life. Never looking so well. Papa is only speaking his own regret." "Very much to the honour of both," was the handsome reply. "And do you see her, sir, terribly often?" asked Isabella in the plaintive tone which just suited her father. Mr. Woodhouse hesitated. "Not near so often, my dear, as I could wish." "Oh, Papa, we have missed seeing them but one entire day since they married. Either in the morning or evening of every day, excepting one, have we seen either Mr. Weston or Mrs. Weston, and generally both, either at Randalls or here. And as you may suppose, Isabella, most frequently here. They are very, very kind in their visits. Mr. Weston is really as kind as herself. Papa, if you speak in that melancholy way, you will be giving Isabella a false idea of us all. Everybody must be aware that Miss Taylor must be missed, but everybody ought also to be assured that Mr. and Mrs. Weston do really prevent our missing her by any means to the extent we ourselves anticipated, which is the exact truth." "Just as it should be," said Mr. John Knightley, "and just as I hoped it was from your letters. Her wish of showing you attention could not be doubted, and his being a disengaged and social man makes it all easy. I have been always telling you, my love, that I have no idea of the change being so very material to Hartfield as you apprehended, and now you have Emma's account. I hope you will be satisfied." "Why, to be sure," said Mr. Woodhouse. "Yes, Certainly, I cannot deny that Mrs. Weston, poor Mrs. Weston, does not come and see us pretty often, but then she is always obliged to go away again. Oh, that's so funny. It would be very hard upon Mr. Weston if she did not, Papa. You quite forget poor Mr. Weston. I think indeed, said John Knightley pleasantly, that Mr. Weston has some little claim. You and I, Emma, will never venture to take part of the poor husband. I being a husband, and you not being a wife, the claims of the man may very likely strike us with equal force. As for Isabella, she has been married long enough to see the convenience of putting all the Mr. Westons aside as much as she can. Me, my love, cried his wife, hearing and understanding only in part. Are you talking about me? I am sure nobody ought to be, or can be, a greater advocate for matrimony than I am. And if it had not been for the misery of her leaving Hartfield, I should never have thought of Miss Taylor but as the most fortunate woman in the world. And as to slighting Mr. Weston, that excellent Mr. Weston, I think there is nothing he does not deserve. I believe he is one of the very best-tempered men that ever existed, excepting yourself and your brother. I do not know his equal for temper. I shall never forget his flying Henry's kite for him that very windy day last Easter, and ever since his particular kindness last September 12th in writing that note at 12 o'clock at night on purpose to assure me that there was no scarlet fever at Cobham. I have been convinced there could not be a more feeling heart, nor a better man in existence. If anybody can deserve him, it must be Miss Taylor. Where is the young man? Said John Knightley. Has he been here on this occasion, or has he not? He has not been here yet, replied Emma. There was a strong expectation of his coming soon after the marriage, but it ended in nothing, and I have not heard him mentioned lately. But you should not tell them of the letter, my dear, said her father. He wrote a letter to poor Mrs. Weston to congratulate her, and a very proper, handsome letter it was. She showed it to me. I thought it very well done of him indeed. Whether it was his own idea, you know, one cannot tell, but he is young. And his uncle, perhaps. My dear papa, he is 23. You forget how time passes. 23? Is he indeed? Well, I could not have thought it. But he was but 2 years old when he lost his poor mother. Well, time does fly indeed, and my memory is very bad. However, it was an exceedingly good, pretty letter, and gave Mr. and Mrs. Weston a great deal of pleasure. I remember it was written from Weymouth, and dated September 28th, and began, My dear Madam, but I forgot how it went on, and it was signed F.C. Weston Churchill. I remember that perfectly. How very pleasing and proper of him, cried the good-hearted Mrs. Knightley. I have no doubt of his being a most amiable young man. But how sad it is that he should not live at home with his father! There is something so shocking in a child's being away from his parents and natural home. I can never comprehend how Mr. Weston could part with him. To give up one's child. I really never could think well of anybody who proposed such a thing to anybody else. Nobody ever did think well of the Churchills, I fancy, observed Mr. John Knightley coolly. But you need not imagine Mr. Weston to have felt what you would feel in giving up Henry, or John. Mr. Weston is rather an easy, cheerful-tempered man than a man of strong feelings. He takes things as he finds them, and makes enjoyment of them somehow or other, depending, I suspect, much more upon what is called society for his comforts. That is, upon the power of eating and drinking and playing whist with his neighbours 5 times a week, than upon family affection or anything that home affords. They love whist. What is it? I want to know what it is. I mean, I know it's a card game, but how do you play it? Somebody please make a Regency-era card game tutorial. I would go to a town hall or whatever and learn how to play all of the games. Emma could not like what bordered on a reflection on Mr. Weston and had half a mind to take it up, but she struggled and let it pass. She would keep the peace if possible, and there was something honourable and valuable in the strong domestic habits the all-sufficiency of home to himself, whence resulted her brother's disposition to look down on the common rate of social intercourse, and those to whom it was important. It had a high claim to forbearance. Huh. I feel like we all of a sudden started talking about West Churchill, and I don't know how we got on that subject. I'll have to do a little review. Like, I feel like I know what forbearance means, but now that it's in this context, I just need to look it up again, and I'm gonna do it for anybody else who needs it too. Oh, patient self-control, restraint, and tolerance. Okay, self-preservation, forbearance from taking action. I mean, on second thought, I don't know that I ever did know that word, and it has been used a lot. And I just sort of, you know how you have like a picture of a word in your head and you're like, yeah, yeah, forbearance. I hear it all the time. Shorter chapters. I feel like Mansfield Park had very long chapters, and now I'm used to doing like 30 to 40-minute videos, and these are much shorter. And you know what? Enjoying the delight of smaller chapters, and we're going to leave it there. Let's do it. Happy reading, everybody, and